Oh, hello everybody again in this inspirational video. It's actually one of the last videos I'm going to tape, and I'm very happy and very pleased that uh, an old friend is sitting beside me, and here it's in the evening, and in the mountain time US it's, I think, in the morning, Tim, isn't it?
It's about 11 something.
11 in the morning. Hi, Tim. I'm talking with Tim Hallbom. It's one of my first NLP trainers. And I was a student when you were on stage. And I think, Tim, that we had a talk in the first week that we met about what can I do to do something with NLP in sports. Is there something that I can find? And then you looked at me and you said, it isn't there. And if you want to do something, you have to do it yourself. And I did.
Yeah,
and it's good.
There wasn't much going on back then.
It was a long time ago.
I knew a few people that were doing golf coaching and that sort of thing, but very little on sports specifically, like how to play football more effectively, for example.
It was in the 80s, a long time ago.
Yeah.
How are you, Tim? Now
I'm well, and it's good to see you.
Yeah, thanks. The last time we met was 9 years ago, you said before.
I think so. I think it was 2009, actually, so that would make it 11 years ago.
11, ooh.
That was in Den Bosch with you.
It's still in Den Bosch, yes. Yeah, you were our guest. And how are you doing since March that we have this lockdown all over the world?
Well, it's been interesting because we were actually training in Japan at the NLP Learning Institute in Japan, and this the virus started popping up in Japan from a cruise ship, and we got a really strong sense that we better leave early, which we did, because we could get stranded in a sense if they weren't allowing us back in the country. So we flew home early and immediately started working on Zoom with our groups. Like the next day flying back, all kind of jet lagged from Japan. But thank God we've got things like Zoom, because, if this had been when I first met you, we couldn't have done something like that. We just didn't have the technology. So we've been very fortunate, and I'm sure everybody out there that is listening to this is also learning how to use technology in a deeper way and in a more personal way and that kind of thing. And certainly you are. This is a good example of that. And in a way, it's I like the way that we're all getting connected. One of the challenges that I always had, and Chris and I, my wife and I, who trains with me, have talked about is, we've got so many friends across the world like you, and we don't get to see you because you're 6,000 miles away, so it's kind of nice to be able to meet up this way and share some ideas and that sort of thing.
And how will this change the world?
Well, I think that's one of the ways I just said. I think it is changing the world. And in some ways, we're getting less connected. It's funny, where we live in the Rocky Mountains, just below the Rocky Mountains. And so the weather here is very nice, usually sunny and dry and attractive. And everybody's outdoors. And it's interesting to watch people because all the kids are playing, but they're playing things where they don't have contact with each other. Or we see the neighbors on the porch, but they're 2 meters apart, and which is good sense. And every once in a while you don't, and I kind of go, So it's harder to connect up, I think, with your neighbors, but in a way, I think we're taking more opportunities to connect up with friends that are at a distance. And since so much of my career has been training all around the world, it's great to be able to see friends this way. So I think one way is I think we're going to start using technology more. I think I think this is bringing to a head the fact that we need to do something with our climate crisis that's real and tangible and palpable. And, so far there's been a lot of lip service to that, but not a lot of action.
Mm.
And this is forcing us. I have my old business partner, Susie Smith, she said she thinks Pachamama, Earth Mother, is basically saying, slapping us around a little bit and saying, you can't keep doing this. And I remember talking years ago, we modeled a shaman from Peru, and
Yeah.
somebody asked him a question. We're destroying the earth. What do you recommend we do about that? He started laughing, and he said, well, the Earth Mother is just going to go like this to us sooner or later. It's much more it's much more powerful than we are, and we've got to. So I think it's going to wake us up. They said one of the reasons for the pandemic and maybe future epidemics is we're taking up more and more of the space and
Mm.
pushing animal species closer to us in a sense. They don't have the room to move away. And so we're probably going to have more access to their viruses. And there's going to be more of these leaps across species. So I think one of the things I'm hoping comes from this is some common sense on how to take care of our planet more effectively. Stop using the kind of pesticides we are. Our bird population is down by 50% since 1970 in the world. Our butterfly population is down by more than that. The EU finally stopped using certain kinds of pesticides that were systemic, that were killing the bees. We're not there yet in the United States because there's too much money going through the politicians. But anyway, I think this might kind of be a wake-up call to a lot of us. And I'm hoping we change as a result of that.
So it will be a shift of values,
Yes, and
I
maybe
believe.
valuing what's real and not just, I think we've been the victims of greed and power and selfishness, and now it's time that we start cooperating. And this may force our hand, which is, I think, can be sometimes out of these tragedies come the most beautiful things.
And how can do you think NLP help us with what's happening now?
Well, actually, several of us got together and we were talking about that, and we were related it a lot to climate change. And we said, what are some unique things that we as NLPers can do? Because we're not, earth scientists or physicists or whatever, agriculturists, but what we thought we could do is help with messaging. The thing about NLP, we do a lot of modeling with language patterns and the language patterns of Milton Erickson, which are the language patterns of influence. So often what I see from people trying to wake us up about the environment or about this COVID-19 virus, it's more like the fear part of it. It's kind of like, oh no, this bad thing and that bad thing are going to happen. And what I see is a lot of discouragement. I remember talking to some young people a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and I was asking them what they plan to do with their future. And they said, what future? There isn't going to be much of a future. So why bother? And I thought, boy, that's a shame. This is where we need to get innovative and creative and say, what do we need to do to make this world a safe and wonderful place to plan and live out our futures and our children's futures? And I think this is one of maybe the first things that's going to come along and shake us up a little bit. So I'm thinking what we can do is help with proper messaging. There's these ideas in NLP like proper naming. If you say any word, of course, it creates an inner experience. So if I say the word dog, anybody that understands what I just said is going to have some kind of image of a dog and that sort of thing. And if we say, we can help guide people's experience towards a recognition of what they can do or what's possible. And I think also things like the well-formedness conditions and outcomes. I see a lot of goals that organizations have, and it's wonderful they have goals, but often the goals aren't well formed or aren't likely and aren't well understood. And I think if we employ those things that we know, build a compelling future for larger groups and not just for individuals, you know.
Meaningful.
Yes, exactly. So I think we have a lot to offer. And I think if we look at our own unique skills, you know, because this interesting discussion started up when we said, well, what can we do as NLP people, you know, about like this virus and this, you know, the climate and all that. People were saying, well, we can, you know, be sure we bring our own bags to the grocery store and we can, you know, recycle stuff. And that's true. We can do that. And those are all great things to do, but everybody can do that. But what unique things, you know, if the NLP community is listening, I'd love to say to you, what unique things do you have that you can offer that to deal with this? I think we can help empower people. We can give people a sense of control. Of course, as you know, one of the areas I've spent the most time with is health. And there's a lot of ways we can use NLP to help strengthen our immune system. And, you know, daily practices of breathing. We can start eliminating the limiting beliefs about ourselves and about what's possible for ourselves and replacing them with empowering beliefs like, you know, I can do it.
So it's time for a global drop-off.
I think it is, exactly.
Because you have been teaching me the drop-off.
But we have the thing that Chris actually developed more than I did, called the universal cycles of change. And that's when I contributed to it, but it was more her deal. But it's where you have a creation point, and then you have growth, then you go into a wonderful, complex place. Then the environment won't support it anymore. And you have to drop something off, have some dormancy to recreate where you're starting. And this is a big droppings off. I think you're right, Peter. I'd agree with you.
Yeah. Well, Tim, we are at the end of our talk. So if you have a closure or one line or two, end the meeting, please do. Feel free.
Well, let me say this just really quickly to everybody out there. Use your NLP skills. Actually work with yourself. Change your, you know, strengthen your immune system. Share what you can do with the community. You don't even have to call it NLP. You just have to say, here's how you make an outcome that really works. And you've all got amazing tools and abilities. And I'd say, put them into action.
Use it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim. And this is the end of our talk. Say hi to Chris.
I shall.
And I hope to hug you again somewhere.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know.
A virtual hug to you and all your listeners.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye, Tim.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. See you in the next video. Inspirational time. And use what you have. Ciao.